All right, so I'm going to go through the points that I think that you made here. The first point that you made is you don't believe socialism in one country is possible, you believe it must be global. The second point that you made is that you believe socialism cannot evolve out of a feudalist system, only a capitalist system. The third thing is a quote by Engels, which essentially supports this view that if a leader is in a position where they want to create socialism, but there is not yet the conditions for dictatorship of the proletariat, that leader will be in a bad position, okay? The fourth thing that you made is a distinction between state ownership for profit versus common ownership of means of production, which is then directed towards the creation of use value. And you seem to be very much against the notion that central planning can be utilized, or even the need for any sort of labor voucher system. Those are your beliefs. Those are your points, if I'm representing them correctly, and I'm going to go through these one by one. So the first thing, socialism in one country is not possible. Well, I would like to see what your idea of a global socialist revolution would look like, because the material results of a civil war or a war of independence, which results in socialism, is that you then have to concentrate on rebuilding your own country. That is the concrete result of that. And if you want to have a global socialist revolution, well, I mean, what are you actually going to do? You know, are you going to rebuild your country militaristically to go plow down the world, to go make everything socialist? I mean, and how would you even achieve that? Would you be able to invade a capitalist country and cause them to become socialist? Is that a realistic proposal? I would like to hear your thoughts on that, because that does not sound very realistic to me. The second point you made is that socialism cannot evolve out of feudalism, only capitalism can. Well, this is the thing about China and Vietnam especially, is because they had such a majority peasant society, the type of socialism which they ended up creating. First, they tried to do more of a central plan, like Maoist type or Stalinist type socialism, as it would be called, and they could not get enough riches, right? So then they switched to a more, like, even more market-based system. Now, to you, you reject both the central planned sort of Stalinist thing, as well as the more, as some people say, Dengist, Deng Xiaoping market socialism, socialism with Chinese characteristics, or, the Vietnamese model. Seems that you reject these two things both, right? Well, this is actually going by what Marx and Engels were saying about the objective requisite conditions for society. So basically what they're doing is going through a capitalist phase, right? Somewhat capitalist phase, which still has the state sitting above the capitalist machine, trying to keep the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie from emerging, right? Trying to keep the traditional capitalist dictatorship from emerging, while allowing the forces of production to develop in more of a capitalist sort of way. And part of the reason why they do this is not just because of their low level of development, which they're trying to rectify using rapid market growth. Part of this is participation in the world system in order to trade not just goods, but also to get technologies, which they haven't yet developed domestically, and be able to advance their economies at a faster rate. So the systems produced in Vietnam and China actually are in line with their developmental needs as described by Marx and Engels. And Engels, was right that this puts these countries in somewhat of an awkward position, because there are a lot of people that question, there's a lot of inequality in China, for example. They're growing really, really quickly, but there is a lot of inequality. Sometimes healthcare treatments are too expensive, or sometimes there's problems with corruption, which has to be purged out, and it is. And or there's problems with businesses doing immoral practices that have to be cracked down on. That it does cause a lot of difficulty and problems. But it is the objective process that they're going through. And I would really like to see why they have to go through, or basically what I would like to know is, why do you think that a socialist country going through its objective process of development in this way is fundamentally the same as a bourgeois dictatorship, which is actually more based around an oligarchy, more based around the profits of monopolies and bankers who control the state at a central level? I really do not think that sort of oligarchical capitalist system, that sort of dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, represents the Vietnamese system. I don't think that accurately describes that system, and I would love to dig in deeper and see if what I'm saying is actually true or not. And keep in mind that even if there are a lot of billionaires in power or influencing the state, the question at hand is, do they have the decisive influence, or at the end of the day, do the people win? At the end of the day, does the state actually control what's going on and direct the development of private enterprise? That is the key question. And the last distinction that you make is that between state ownership for profit versus common ownership for use. You say that central planning is unnecessary or should not be utilized. Well, I don't really understand what it is you have against central planning, because here's the thing about decentralized planning. When you have a resource like steel or petroleum, you have to allocate it in a way that works for the entire economy, okay? You have to decide, where am I going to put this resource? And you simply cannot do this in a decentralized way. So you can't tell me that the economy can have a completely decentralized system, because we're not just trading paper airplanes that people are making at home. We're not just trading popsicle sticks where people cut down the tree and turn it into popsicle sticks in little factories. No, the economy runs on resources that have to be distributed on a national scale and even on an international scale, which may inevitably result in the creation of, at the very least, markets. The alternative to having international markets is to have international co-planning, where you have an economic plan from the top down that applies to a large set of countries, sort of like, as I understand it, the way that the Soviet Union functioned, but on a more global scale. I'm not saying that that's a bad idea, but I'm just saying that unless you actually have that level of coordination between countries established in a hyper-centralized way, you're going to end up with international markets. And that's a pragmatic view. To me, that is the most pragmatic, that is the most realistic view. The last point that I wanted to make is that profit is growth. And Marx said that the objective development of the economy corresponds with the level of socialism, the phase of socialism that you are able to have. When you have a lower developed economy, you need more controls to control the limited amount of resources that exist and to maximize growth. But once you start to get a very, very high level of abundance, strict economic controls become less necessary, and labor hours can decrease, and things can relax and have less strict controls. They can decentralize to whatever extent is natural. They can decommodify, where things are no longer produced for exchange value but use value, yada, yada, yada. But in order to get to that point, the economy actually has to develop at a maximum level, and profit is synonymous with growth. This is the thing you have to understand about profit. Profit is good. You want profit. Now, exploitation is when profit, instead of going towards economic growth on a macroeconomic level, keep in mind the Soviet Union and even modern China plan on economic growth not on the level of individual firms, but on a macroeconomic level, growth of the whole economy, right? But when you have the growth of individual firms, the profit of individual firms, the capitalists feed off of the growth of these firms in order to grow their own power and influence and become a dictatorial class that lives in extreme opulence, then that's exploitation, right? That's exploitation. Profit becomes exploitation when capitalists abuse profit. But profit itself is good, it is growth, and actually when capitalists use profit towards exploitation, they are reducing the amount of growth and they are reducing the amount of profit. So planning for macroeconomic profit on a long-term level actually is against the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie and paradoxically represents a more profit-oriented system. Keep this in mind. Capitalism is not defined simply by the drive towards profit, but by the manifestation of the way in which profit is used and the way in which it's incentivized. So there are definitely a few things that I would like to investigate, like the class structure of Vietnam, the way that their economy was planned after their revolution versus how it's planned now, the differences, the meaning there. But I think that it's important to clear up a little bit of confusion that I think you might have about the nature of economics here. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.